Before we start the podcast, a quick message, definitely not from sponsors. We said off the bat that we'd not monetize this podcast, and we stand by it. We do, however, face increasing costs that individual members are largely covering themselves, such as a full Zoom plan and a decent transcription service, along with the usual hosting costs. We will therefore ask you if you would like to contribute towards these via our Ko-fi at ko-fi.com/gozpod or by purchasing podcast merch at gosatan.com, then hitting the shop link and selecting Gozpod from the categories. Links will be provided in the show notes. We will categorically only use these to cover costs, and in the very unlikely event that we get more than we pay out, the remainder will go to the charities supported by our Satan Not Hatin campaign. If you can't afford to pay or just can't be asked, that's fine. We won't offer any lesser content to you freeloaders. On to the podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of Gozpod, the podcast from the Global Order of Satan. And today we are going to take a deeper dive into what we started to talk about on an episode a few months back, which was called Satanic Safety, all about the reasons you'd want to stay safe online if you're in a minority group. This time round, in the light of the world turning rapidly towards the far right in the few intervening months, we'd like to give you some more concrete advice on how to stay safe online, what kind of things to avoid. And for that, we have some guests who are experts in the field. First off, we introduce ourselves. We've got Lygia.
Hail Satan.
We've got Bohema.
Hail Satan.
We've got Laraj.
Hail Satan.
And special guests, Gis.
Hail Satan.
And Kay.
Hail Satan.
I'll now hand over to Laraj, who will explain in a lot more detail what this is about and how and why we brought Gis and Kay in on this one as well. Over to you, Laraj.
Okay, so as Lithos said, this came about because this one of the first, I think it was actually the second episode we did, was about satanic safety and how to stay safe online. If you're a member of a marginalised community, of which Satanism definitely falls under that. And as Lithos also said, the world has taken a turn to the hard right in the last couple of months and looks increasingly like it's going to be going that way. So we wanted to revisit that. After Trump's election success, we wrote an article about ways that you could stay safe online and stay more private. Particularly with a view to those people who might want to perform some form of activism. And we wanted to really follow up on that with a podcast episode. And two of our members, Kay and Gis, are both specialists in this field. So I'll let them introduce themselves and why they're specialists in this field. And I'll go alphabetically. So Gis.
Evening, Hail Satan again. Hi, yes, Gis. My background in cybersecurity, so I've been researching in this field for about a decade, and I sort of specialize in the verification of security protocols with a focus on critical national infrastructure, so like power grids, telecoms, things that go boom and cause panic if they go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely would cause panic. And Kay,
Hello, I'm
hi.
Kay. Hail Satan again. Uh, I similarly have been doing research in this area for about a decade now. My interest is not quite the same as GIS. I focus more on cybersecurity and privacy as it relates to the individual rather than on national infrastructure, focusing on usable security and privacy. So, privacy and security for people who aren't necessarily computer experts, and as
Mm,
well on technical elements of anonymity. So, how one can use services online without revealing who they are to the multitudes of companies that exist on the internet.
mm. Okay. And when we were setting this episode up, the three of us were talking, and we sort of said we'd sort of like you two guys would both kind of outline a scenario which would kind of illustrate to our listeners why privacy security is important and how it affects us. So, Kay, do you want to go through what you've got?
Yes, absolutely. I've been, in addition to my research, I also do security and privacy communication as just a part-time hobby where I live. And one of the things that I've learned throughout the multiple events that we've done is just how much people underestimate the power of a like or the power of some form of interaction that they leave on a platform on the internet. So I just want to talk briefly about why something like a like is so desired by both content creators and platforms and what the implications of that are for our privacy, because I think it's good to see that from both ends. In the modern economy, data is what sells. To be a little bit more accurate, data doesn't really sell as much as we sell. We are a product. Our eyeballs and our ears during an ad are a product. And in order to do the best they can, quote unquote, a company wants to ensure that the right eyeballs and the right ears are viewing an advertisement to result in a sale or whatever they do. So, what does this have to do with a like? Well, when we're on a platform such as YouTube or anything else like that, typically the way that we interact with the content creators is we like a post. Or even if we consider Facebook or Instagram, the way that we interact with other people is we give a like. It seems like such a small thing. We give a single click and we don't even think about the implications of it other than, oh, maybe this will make somebody feel good.
Mm,
But it does a lot more than that. So, what companies like to do in order to ensure that ads go to the right eyeballs and the right ears is they um, target their ads for certain audiences. I'm sure, I assume most people have heard about targeted advertisements before. But that means that they have to be able to learn things about you, infer things about you. And how do they do that? Well, they do that by the things that you like and the people you associate with. So, if I give a thumbs up on a video on YouTube, and let's say that that video is about 3D printing, for example, then YouTube could safely assume that I am into content about 3D printing. So, if I then go to watch another YouTube video, even if it's not related, they can serve me an ad about 3D printing. Great. But that's one like and one ad. The power of a like is not in one like, it's in aggregate. Let's imagine that I am YouTube And I have videos, lots and lots and lots of videos, and the transcriptions, the auto transcribed words in those videos. Well, what I could do is I could take a look at a user and I could take a look at all the videos that they like, and I could take the transcription of the content and I could go, what words pop up most frequently? What other words are these words related to? And I can start to infer things about people. There's a study, it's an old study, it's from 2017, but I'm sure it's more relevant today than it ever was, that demonstrated that Facebook, just by liking 10 pages, Facebook would be able to identify somebody as belonging to the LGBTQ plus community, just with 10 simple likes. I'm sure that today, and to take the obvious away, they weren't likes on LGBTQ plus pages. They were likes on things like Michelle Obama, Lady Gaga, and things like that. And a certain combination of those 10 likes, they could say with very, very high probability that somebody was part of the LGBTQ community. Today, I'm sure that they need less than 10. I don't have scientific evidence for that, but I'm pretty sure it's true. So, one of the things that I would like people to take away from this long ramble that I've done is that when you are liking something, you are doing more than just mindlessly clicking a button. You are, yes, you are deciding to support a content creator by boosting their content and making sure that their content is seen by more people. But you are also at the same time sending a clear signal to YouTube, Facebook, and whatever companies they may decide to sell their data to, what you like, who you are, and who you associate with. So, think about that before you click.
Thank you very much. And I think that ties in, Gis, with your area of interest as well. Would you like to tell us about your scenario?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm gonna explain my approach to this through like a very musty uh piece of infrastructure, and that is the archive, the database. Um, and when we think about sort of states or corporations, they, in the informational sense, are giant keepers of records. Um, and when dealing with our information, whether they be state or the corporation, there are two kind of verbs that they engage in. Kay has already sort of emphasized one, which is the inference, that they infer things about the actions that we may take in the future, or
Mm,
they infer things about our identities beyond what we have disclosed on the internet. Um, but the other one is records. You know, they will see what we have done and they will record them.
mm,
And in these sort of rightward leaning times, this kind of creates anxiety because we now no longer know, well, we have a tradition of evidence and evidentiary procedure, and whether it be Trump and the ghouls that he's bringing in, or the more sort of subtle databases that are occurring in India under Modi, we now no longer have a good idea of what the balance of record versus inference is, and what will be done with it given the claims of the direction they want to take their countries. And so, what I, in my kind of scenario and my framework, it is trying to give as fuzzy and as accessible framework for thinking about sort of technologies of encryption through the verbs of we want actions and parts of identity to be omitted from the records of these databases, whether the state or corporations, or we want to expand the possibilities of what can be inferred about us for those inferences to be meaningless, and sort of explain how the processes of operational security and the tools of cryptography give us small spaces of freedom either to express who we wish to be as Satanists or other sort of adjacent identities in these encrypted spaces, or
Mm.
give us a little bit of freedom to plan actions whether we would, attempt to
Mm.
resist or protest the direction that the world around us is taking.
Yeah. So I think basically what you're both saying is that there are consequences to what we do online, whether we know about them or not. And um, it can be as something as simple as liking a post to the siloing of our kind of like digital identities in ways that we have not an awful lot of control or knowledge about how they're being used, which is kind of scary. Yeah. What do the rest of you think?
Well, I've come from, I'm from an IT background, more of a general networking, network maintenance, and my involvement with security was making sure security software was out there, web filters were maintained, routers had, the proper blocks on them, that kind of thing. And so I come from the paranoid end of the spectrum where I trust no one or nothing online, and all the the sort of social media uh, accounts I've set up different names for each one and created a different email address for them, and put nothing personal on them,
Mm.
and dumped them after I've found them too toxic for my mind. So, yes, I fully, understand and agree with what I've heard from Kay and Gis. And I say, my feeling is, yeah, I've always fucking thought that. Don't trust anything online.
Mm.
Anything that wants your personal information, they want it for a reason, especially if they're offering a service for free, because there is no such thing as running an online service and incurring no costs. If something's being
Right.
offered for free, then they as I believe Kay said, you are the product. You are not the consumer of Google. You are what they are selling. You are not the consumer. You are a product on Facebook. You are a product on X. You are a product on anything that has advertising, and that is not being publicly funded. They have to get the money from somewhere to run their shit. And that's one thing to consider, especially if you're going to put security software on your device and it's offered for free. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
make sure you know what you're doing.
And this, I think, is at the root of the problem. That statement, make sure you know what you're doing. Because no matter how much we possibly uh, don't like the idea, it is a fairly technical subject a lot of the time. And not everybody does know how to sort of take precautionary steps. I'd be interested in both Gis and Kay weighing in on what they think might be steps that people can take that are within the ability or the normal range of I'm trying to say it without being patronizing. Um, the ordinary level of user could possibly make use of.
Would you like to go first, or shall I?
I will go first because, like, I think I have a good way of bounding the question, but I don't have a good way of answering the question. Um, and then the more practical advice can kind of come in. Um, that to kind of like it is overwhelming. And to be totally secure is what is a Sisyphean task. Um, but even to be reasonably secure is a grueling practice. Like my home network project is 2 years in the making, and I'm still nowhere near done. And that's me trying to reclaim all of my data kind of vibes. Um, but the reason why I sort of asked to go first is sort of to bound it is sort of like the tools in which we will probably discuss have a very limited notion of what security is. And it
Mm.
is a very liberal one insofar as it's it is about two people talking to each other through a tube or like the tin cans with the wire between, and just sort of presuming that a bad guy is there with crocodile clips in between. Um, and that model doesn't really have a notion of whether one of the parties is a person or a multinational corporation or a government.
Yeah.
Um, and so you may have like flashbacks and nightmares of your sysadmin screaming at you, going, "Don't write the passwords down." Um, and I want you to ignore that. Like, it may feel insecure, but the notion of, what I would like to advocate for before we discuss the technical aspects of this is if you um, feel that you can securely hide the written down password somewhere, that is valid. If you can trust someone with an envelope of your passwords and sort of like um, in case I die, please delete all of my horny sort of
Mm.
files on my computer policy, that is valid. There is, these are practices that can be done, that it is about bringing trust in other people into the security around the technology that we're going to talk about.
Mm.
Trust being different from faith, though,
Mm.
that like trust in Satan but verify is different from just going, I'm going to write it on this poster and leave it, um, because faith is absolutely where they get you.
Yeah.
Um, and so understand the limitations of the model of the tools that we're going to talk about, and then build processes and relationships that mitigate um, these weaknesses around the tools we're going to talk about that are can be reasonably implemented. Um, because again, I don't expect people to spend 2, 3 years of their lives building like a home network to try and reclaim all of their data. That
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
absurd for the average person.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think?
Um, I want to begin by just agreeing. So before we started recording, Gis sent me a message saying, "Well, let's see if you agree with everything I have to say here, and then we'll talk about, future steps." I think I'm pretty sure, we're okay on the agreeing part, 100% on that. It is um, an incredibly difficult task. I like to compare it to a skill, privacy being a skill. There are some people who can, if we think about bodybuilders, there are people who could pick up an intense amount of weight, right? Maybe like equivalent to half a car or something, or a quarter of a car. I don't know. I don't know how much people can pick up. I didn't look up the world records. But they didn't start that way, right? They
Mm.
started by picking up very small weights and then building up to that. And
Yeah.
so The first advice that I'd like to give is to focus on this not as a I want to install an application or a program and know that I am secure, because that does not exist. And anybody who tells you that that exists is simplifying the problem too much, I think, my opinion.
And it should also be said at this point, any company that tries to sell you a product saying that that exists is selling you snake oil.
Yes.
Yes, indeed, indeed. And any security expert in inverted commas who tells you they will make your shit 100% secure is fucking lying to you, because there is no such thing. And if you assume you're secure, you're kidding yourself. You've always got to assume there might be someone else out there who knows how to get into something that I haven't even thought of. But I'll let you carry on. Sorry.
Sorry, Kay. Yeah, we
No,
got him.
you're good. You're good. But just like, there's somebody out there who might be able to lift more than half a car, right? They also have costs, limitations, priorities, etc. And they also got there, and they don't have unlimited time and resources to do whatever they want to whomever they want. There needs to be priorities always, right? For people who are looking to break privacy, breach privacy, and for people who are wishing to gain privacy, right? There's always limitation in resources, be it mental, be it literally computational, be it money. Sometimes it's money. So what I'd like to do is start with a few privacy habits that is the equivalent of picking up the smallest weight in the gym. So that this way people can get started flexing those privacy muscles. And then slowly, when they finish, they've mastered those, they can go up to the heavier weights and the heavier weights and the heavier weights. And the first has already been mentioned, which is called compartmentalization. Which has its limitations. It is not the strongest thing in the world, but this is the idea of I am going to have separate accounts for one thing versus another thing versus another thing, and I'm going to do my absolute best to keep my identities siloed. Now, the reason that I say this is like the smallest weight is because to a certain degree we already do this in our lives. Maybe not with online accounts. People are really sloppy with this in online accounts. But the person who I am when I'm at work, and the person who I am right now in the recording of this podcast are fairly different people, right?
Yeah.
I silo my identities. But that's a technique. There are technologies that help you with this. So is there anybody here who doesn't know what a browser is? If I say the word browser, does everybody know what I'm talking about? All right, cool. The first time I did one of these events, I started talking about browser extensions, and about 15 minutes in, someone raised their hand and said, "What's a browser?" So I got to check, right?
Fair enough.
So there are browser extensions that you can add that do technical things that probably I won't explain the behind the scenes of, in order to make compartmentalization easier. Basically, when you open a new tab on your browser, you can choose a context like work or entertainment or shopping or banking. And it does a few things to avoid all of those aspects of your life getting mixed together. For those of you who use Firefox, multi-account containers is the extension that I would recommend for this. I use it daily, and it is pretty good. It actually gives a color for people who are not colorblind. This is very useful, and for people who are, I'm so sorry. But there are little colors that they give so that this way you could look at a tab and know if you've opened it in the right compartment of your life. So now I pause to see if there are any questions, because I have the habit to just keep talking.
No, I don't think so. It's just no, sorry, something did pop up, but it's gone again. So no doubt it'll come back at some point. But sorry, carry on.
We will have to put, by the way, we will put the names of the specific extensions, for example, that are mentioned in the show notes. So don't worry about having to run for a fucking pen and go, what was that fucking Firefox extension called? Because I've forgotten it already. But yeah, we will leave them for you, obviously.
Perfect. So that is the equivalent of your smallest weight at the gym. Is you install that and you make sure that whenever you're watching a YouTube video about entertainment, you open your entertainment one, and whenever you're doing work related tasks, you open your work one. And it for people who are interested in the technical abilities about how this works, find me on the server and ask me. And I will be happy to give you a technical explanation until you're bored of it. But I'm going to avoid that here. So if that's the smallest weight, what's the next weight? This is actually kind of a big jump, and I'm sure, guess this is where you were thinking we were going to go, and some of the applications that we were talking about. There are applications that when we send messages to other people, we basically send a message to a company, and the company stores that message and promises to send it to everyone else at the moment that they are online, in the order that it's received, etc., etc. A great example of this is Discord. But as we can very quickly see by that explanation, the company sees every message. So that means the most well thought out message that you are super proud of, that essay that you wrote, putting together various different sources, and you just want to state and you want everyone to read and be happy about, to that one drunken DM that you sent your friend at 3 a.m. and you woke up the next morning and said, why the hell did I send that?
Yeah.
And
Sorry for
the
sending
company,
you a dick pic.
right, exactly. And the company can see all of those. And that's a problem, I think, for privacy, especially when we consider that whole idea of, inference. Who is talking to
Yeah.
whom? What are they saying? How frequently are they using certain words? Right? What happens if those 3 words happen to be? We might have to cut this part out. Okay, just as a heads up. What happens if those 3 words happen to be right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so there's big issues with that. And to give a safer alternative in the case that we decide to cut that out, what happens if one of those tends to be an incredibly left-leaning incendiary phrase in a time of a very right-wing government?
Yeah, I mean that's part of I mean the context to this show is that to this episode, I'm not sure that 3 or 4 years from now, things that we would ordinarily think of as not being particularly incendiary to say might be considered incendiary to say.
So in order to avoid problems from this, we might want to move over to platforms where, even if we are relying on a company in the middle in order to send our messages, there are guarantees, Gis already mentioned encryption, that the company in the middle cannot read what we're saying. Now, there's still a problem here in that the company knows exactly who is talking to whom. And so if they figure out, oh, this person's Satanist, or this person's a leftist, or if this person's in the LGBTQ community, and they speak a lot with a group of people, they might be able to still infer, but at least there is some plausible deniability in what the contents of the messages are. So I will name drop what is considered the golden standard at the moment, and then I will also speak about a few alternatives that are also commonly available. So the golden standard at this moment, and Gis, please feel free to disagree with me if you don't agree, is called Signal. Okay, I got 2 thumbs up. I'm happy. Signal is a not-for-profit free application, but the way that it gets its money, despite it being free, the way it gets its money is transparent. They get it through funds and they get it through user donations, and they will beg you for money every now and then, kind of like Wikipedia does, but not as obnoxiously. That being said, it is still free, available for everyone to use. I use Signal, and the biggest problem with Signal is when you install Signal and you go, oh, great, nobody I know uses Signal. The way that I have resolved that is extreme, and I may not necessarily recommend it for everyone else, but telling people, hey, this is the only way to talk to me.
Mhm.
And for me, I am an immigrant in a country that is, relatively far from where I was born. And that particularly worked with my family and friends because, you know, international phone calls are expensive. And
Mhm.
so when they wanted to keep in touch with me after I immigrated and they stated, and I stated, well, this is the only way. And they said, no, but please just get on Facebook. And I said, no, this is the only way. They did it.
Mhm.
Now, in terms of friends, family, and work contacts, I think I have over 200 contacts on Signal. I use it as my primary messenger. Part of that is because of the communities that I live in. Security and privacy people use Signal all the time. And other parts of that is being able to convince the communities that I was in to join it.
Yeah.
Some alternatives, a particularly exciting alternative could be something like Matrix or Element, which is a lot more like Discord in that it is organizable into rooms and is also end-to-end encrypted. My understanding from some of the work that I've read is that there might be some problems with Matrix in terms of the security of it if you don't trust the person who is running the server. But let's imagine that, GOS runs its own server. That becomes not necessarily a problem as long as we trust GOS, which I presume we do because we're all in it.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's I mean, yes, I use Matrix. And you're right, there is that concern, and that concern can be mitigated by people running their own server, but that is a level of technicality that is going to be beyond, well, most people, I would think. Yeah.
Oh, most definitely.
Mm.
I've been playing around with it at home recently, after I saw that you have as well.
Yeah.
And it's not hard for people with IT backgrounds, but for people without IT backgrounds, it is difficult. So
Yeah.
as long as you trust the person running the server, things should be all right. Even still, your messages are not readable by the person who is running the server
Mm.
unless they perform a very specific type of attack, which is why we say that you have to trust the person who is running the server.
Just to kind of comment of like, this is the kind of things of the aforementioned. I have spent 2 years trying to kind of reclaim my data. Like,
Yeah.
running a Matrix server falls into that level of absurdity.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it is absurd, but I do. Yeah.
I have a
Um,
colleague at work who also does, so
yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of that's browser and possibly WhatsApp style one-to-one or one-to-group communication. Uh, Guess, do you know of any? What is there any other kind of like software or anything like that that I'm thinking of things like email that is inherently insecure anyway.
Um, I can't think of technologies, but I would kind of like to comment from like, yeah, that what Kay has sort of said may feel like very. I would like to kind of like from the perspective of the tyrant and the archivist
Yeah.
explain why Kay has sort of said the things they have said in terms of like the practice of compartmentalization and the choice of these services. That, as sort of I mentioned at the beginning, um, the verbs that you are trying to avoid when it comes to using these tools in the, to win against the tyrant or mitigate against the tyrant is you don't want to be recorded. So in Kay's Discord example, the problem with Discord holding um the message that may say that particular phrase is there is a record of you writing that phrase. And
Mm.
depending on where the servers of that service or that instance of Discord exists, tyrannical governments can then go, we would like a copy of X's,
Yeah.
communications. And so if specific phrases turn up in all of the communications that you have said, then that may lead to people knocking on your door. Um, then to the next verb of being inference of maybe what has been said in those communications are not explicitly, banned phrases or suspect phrases, but the style in which you speak and the particular topics could raise suspicion um, in the face of the tyrant and basically go, well, they've not said anything against us, but they have that vibe. And
Yeah.
so you get a vibe check, which is still an angry knock at the door. Um, but, so the tools that have been recommended are, um, when I said earlier, sort of like the freedom to communicate and the freedom to plan, you know, the tyrant and the archivist cannot necessarily read what is in those channels if you're using Signal. They can
Mm.
still see who you are communicating with.
Mm.
Um, and so the model of security that Signal provides is they can't read the record, but if you are communicating with someone that goes by queer Satanist stoner, um, they're still going to make an inference about what may be in that, you know, unreadable channel, and you may still get in the knock on the door. So
Yeah.
the channel itself doesn't provide concrete security. It provides you with the space to do creative writing exercises to explain why you were speaking to this other person.
Mm.
And so going back to the verbs that I used earlier, signal allows the actual content of your conversations to be omitted from record and obscures by expanding the range of possibilities of topics that you um, are potentially speaking about in that encrypted
Mm.
channel. And so the onus then is not so much what you are talking about, but coming up with a plausible fiction about what the two of you are talking about. Of like, you both agree that it was just locker room talk if anyone asks. Um, that would be sort of like my kind of professional perspective on the advice that Kay has just given.
Mm.
Insofar as your question about sort of email providers, they all have, this then becomes more of a legal question of, where those servers are located in the world,
Yeah.
the jurisdictions and who can ask for them
And that
and the practices of that email provider.
and
I'm
that
sure.
kind of raises an important point. I mean, How do people who are not technically minded, who are not particularly interested in any form of technology or how it works, how do they get to know about these things? How do they keep up with news about them? How do they find these bits of software? Because there aren't always people like us hanging about. So is there a way, do you think? Is there a good way to do that?
Um, my kind of like go-to basic recommendation is the Electronic Frontier Foundation has
Mm,
very good introductory literature about sort of like the basic practices.
mm,
Um, and again, the basic practices and tools. But again, it is still within the model of um, that very liberal, individuated security model. Um, that um, I think sort of to give a concrete example of what is achievable with that model, um, in the aftermath report from the Department of Homeland Security about the Portland uprising, uh,
yeah.
their conclusion was the anarchists have very good operational security. We know who all of them are, but we can't say who did what because they were all using Signal. And so all we got from like scraping Twitter was a list of which anarchists were cancelled by which other anarchists. And so that's not really useful to us. So we know who doesn't like each other, but that's it. Um,
Bloody leftists infighting.
yeah, the 400 leftist splinter meme. Um, but that kind of gives you a model of what you're trying to achieve and what
Mm,
I think it very succinctly kind of gives the point of like they're gonna know who you are and they're gonna know the milieu you travel in,
mm,
but you're trying to uh not get recorded with an action or an identity that is suspect.
yeah. Lygia, can I you're still muted.
Yes.
Is it,
Sorry.
I don't want to sort of like pick on you or anything like that or highlight you, but I know that it's sort of like technology is not a particular
No,
interest of yours.
no.
Everything that we've talked about so far, does it sound from a kind of like from that perspective, does it sound overwhelming, useful, or too technical, or
Hmm. None of what has been said tonight feels overwhelming to me.
mm,
What is overwhelming is the whole fact of this being real
yeah,
and being like, I am an artistic person and it feels like I'm being forced to think about things that I wouldn't choose to think, you
mm,
know? And that is scary because I don't know guys like you, if you spend so much time doing this and it's still I have a feeling it's still a huge thing for your minds, for your brains. It feels like I don't want to even try because like the level I can reach is ridiculous. And if I have to always ask somebody, I don't even know what I would ask, you know? And it takes all the joy away because for me, using any social platform, anything, is mostly joy. Like I want to
mm,
connect to people I love, my friends, my community, my family, because I'm also just me and my kids. Uh, we have left my country, so I do need to reach my
mm,
family. Or I love reading. I want to communicate and
yeah,
in a depth about what I'm reading, about psychology, about philosophy, whatever. And this feels like, every time you do that, or I do that, I open my mind. I open the can of worm, whatever you say, guys. Like I open my opinions because, oh, this is a book I read. This is what I think. I hate this and I love this. Oh, this is misogyny. Fuck you. Whatever. And it's there, but I don't want to stop. I don't want to stop, but also I am scared. So, and also for my kids, I have 2 teenage kids. And I want to be able to tell them, listen, this sounds weird. Let's not do this. Let's do this instead. But I think they know much more than me, which is scary. So
I mean, what you're
if I
saying is I think it's very common. People, I mean, the thing is that people do want to use Instagram. They do want to use Facebook. They do
Yeah.
want to use WhatsApp, Spotify, Netflix, all these things.
Yeah.
Because they serve a particular purpose. Well, and their hidden purpose. But is that I think what we're trying to get to a point here is to sort of ask ourselves, is there a way to have the good bits of that experience without necessarily putting ourselves in a position where we could be compromising? Is that the right word?
Yeah, for sure.
Kay, do you want to? I can see you've got some.
I do. I'm so ready because this is a very in the events that myself and the not-for-profit that I started give, where we talk about this. This is a very, very, very common sentiment, and part of the way that we like to describe this is that we're not asking you to stop doing anything. We are trying to give you the tools to be informed about what might happen, and then give you alternatives for things that if you determine it to a specific thing to be too risky. So talking again about compartmentalization, right? If you determine a specific compartment of your life to be too risky, you can choose a different tool for that and that alone. We're not going to say like, don't use Instagram, because there is social value in connecting to people in that way. I am not one of the people who believes that there is zero social value, even though I don't have Instagram. I do recognize it has social value. It's more about making sure that you know that you're sharing what you want to share and not over sharing rather than anything else.
So to use Lige's example of, I mean, like her, I'm also an avid reader and I like talking to my friends about books I've read. So I could, under my birth name, create an account on Instagram and do that. But if I wanted to go on under my Satan name, I could turn my VPN on. I could open up a containerized tab in Firefox and I could log in. So what I'm saying is there are tools that do what you're suggesting to compartmentalize those two different parts of your life. Does that still sound overwhelming? Like, not overwhelming.
Yeah, like you lost me a little bit when you okay, let's do this. I do use a different account for my satanic stuff. There is another name. I don't put any pictures of my face there. Not that I cut my face off, but like it's not. And I only have maybe 30 friends. So, and I also blocked some people who I don't want. The algorithm I don't understand. So usually what I do is, just in case, I already, before they receive the request, or like, not request, the suggestion of me being in any circle, I block all those people before it happens. I don't know if it does anything. For example, I never use, and this is even my personal, like normal official stuff, I never post for example, if I travel somewhere, okay, tomorrow I'm gonna be in Paris, I would not post while I'm there that I'm there. I will wait maybe a month, and I would just post a picture from Paris. Hey, hi. Never, never would I put it anywhere like, hi, my house is empty, or my kids are alone for 2 hours. Hi, let's meet at my place. No,
Yeah, I think that
just like
goes to what
simple things.
yeah, I mean, and that goes to what
Uh,
Gis was saying earlier about obfuscation and sort of kind of poison in the well sort of thing, and sort of not giving people or the corporations that run these places, they don't need to know that you're in Paris tomorrow. It's perfectly fine, for 6 weeks from now, post a pic from your time in Paris, but they don't need to know you're there right at that particular
yeah,
moment.
it's just a little thing that everybody can do,
So
you
you
know.
said a minute ago that we lost you. What was it that we
No, no,
lost
no.
you?
I meant I meant specifically you. I'm sorry,
Oh,
because you
me.
said
Oh,
something. No, please don't. You just said something that I like when you go to your satanic account, whatever,
yeah.
and then you open something, and
Oh,
then I'm like, okay,
I said
there we go.
VPN, didn't I?
I can make my tea again. I
You
have no
did.
idea. VPN, yes, I understood that. But then you continued, and I think I'm the only one
Oh.
here. So it's not that bad. It's just me who done, like, I don't know.
No, I think it's perfect because, in my experience, if there's one person in who's listening who doesn't understand it and they're brave enough to say they don't understand it, there's another 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7
Yeah.
Yeah.
who did not understand but were not brave enough to say that they did.
Oh, no, no, no. I'm okay with that. Because I know that I know other things. So yeah, it's okay. And I'm not asking what a browser is, so I'm still good, I think.
Even if someone had a question about what a browser is, it's a valid question, and I would never shoot it down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very kind of you. But
When I
no,
started when I started teaching IT back in '99, one of the first lessons I had was teaching complete new beginners to IT how to use a computer. And I started off by saying, and this is a mouse, and you move them, and you do this, and it moves around. And one of the old guys I was teaching actually picked up the mouse and started waving it in the air, like I was demonstrating to.
that would be
And
me.
no, it wouldn't.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, so what Kay was saying about, for one person who's brave enough to say, I didn't get that bit, there are 10 who don't say anything at all.
And we are doing this. We are doing this podcast for people to learn
Yeah.
something. So if I can be the person who asks the questions that like other people wouldn't know, I'm okay. I'm happy.
Good, good, good. And I
Um,
think one of the things, sorry, Gis, go on.
you make your point, and then I would like to kind of make a point about sort of the affect behind sort of your statements of like it is okay to be worried and overwhelmed by this. And
Yeah.
so if you go first, and then I'll.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Uh,
Yours will be
so
better.
I think you raise very valid concerns about the emotions of all of this, that it is overwhelming, and to then kind of go back to, try and tie the practice of compartmentalization to your concerns. Um, we are by no means saying that the tools and the techniques that we're discussing need to be um, applied to every aspect of your online existence. That the main message that I hope to convey is very much that when you want to engage with the practice of, say, you wish to communicate with a queer partner in confidence that this would not bring consequences upon you, or plan sort of a protest action, then these are probably the critical tools to apply in that context.
Uh,
Again,
sorry, go on.
maybe to sort of like obfuscate that the particular people that you're talking to are queer partners or, collaborators,
Mm.
talk to other people like Kay does to then increase the set and obfuscate, which particular people you're talking about are of sort of interest. Um,
Yeah.
but as an artist, expressing yourself on these services, is not verboten. That is not by any means what we are trying to say in this. It is first and foremost um, about the thinking of like, well, what of these things may cause problems? And then to kind of like, again, from the perspective of the tyrant and the archivist and why it may feel overwhelming in this moment is, to take America as the example, this is a very sudden and very rapid and steep change that there were a lot of, we were all aware that America had this apparatus of domestic and global surveillance and how broad it was.
Mm.
But they had always promised us that, they were nice, progressive liberals, and that it would forever be under the operation of these, benevolent, as we say in sort of like the kind of open source community, benevolent
Benevolent
dictator for
dictators.
life. Yeah. But for the not just the re-election of Trump, but the coterie of very competent ghouls that have clear objectives that he's bringing with him this time, that
Yeah.
have made statements about, you know, queer people and sex workers are responsible for the decline of the American empire, and therefore that is sort of like policy number one. That is
Mm.
a very drastic change.
And
And
I
so
thought
that,
it's women. What
oh,
I thought.
I think
Sorry.
they're folded under sex workers and that,
Okay. Oh, all of us.
yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Good.
um,
Basically, if you're not a white cis het
yeah.
guy,
Yeah.
male, then yeah, you're an
You
enemy of
mean
the state.
orange or
Oh, yeah,
white?
orange.
Orange.
The fake hair is necessary.
Yeah.
It's a complimentary thing.
Yeah.
Is it a wig, Donald?
I'm
Um,
sorry. I'm sorry.
no,
Please.
no worries. No, to laugh in these dark times is vital.
Yeah.
It's
But
yeah.
is again sort of again what I guess what I'm suggesting is separating out of the two emotions of like the experience and the drastic change and the very rapid separation of technology being perceived as this progressive force that can only better the world around us to then,
Mm.
first buddy Elon Musk very quickly going mask off and trying to overthrow various European governments with his platform.
Mhm.
For a lot of people that don't spend their days studious around these topics, is a very sudden and overwhelming change.
Yeah.
So you are right to feel overwhelmed just by everything has changed and you're having to suddenly have these conversations. And that's okay. Take
Yeah.
your time with the feelings regarding this sort of drastic change and then do sort of an inventory of what do you feel, because we're also entering uncertainty of we don't know what's going to be the rules of inference and the rules of record going forward. That is a
Right.
big change we're going to have to figure out.
Yeah. That's
But
kind of what concerns
Right.
me the most, that bit.
yeah,
It's I completely agree with you. You say that the playing field has changed and is changing so much. I mean, we those of us who've been in the kind of like privacy community for a while have never had the greatest of trust in governments. and big corporations, but what's happening at the moment is just so out there and so far beyond even what we thought might happen. I think that's where the feelings of being overwhelmed can creep in.
So, like, to do the step back before any of the advice that Kay and I kind of give going forward is first take an inventory about what parts of yourself you feel are or will be acceptable in the coming day-to-day existence, and what parts that you need to unfortunately conceal,
Mm-hmm.
obscure, and try and omit from record. It is a horrible feeling,
It
and
is.
I appreciate that, you know, the swamp dwellers of that I and Kay are, we drink from this cup on a daily basis. We're used
Yeah.
to it. But for a lot of you, it is painful and hard, and I am sorry you're going to have to go through this, and I wish it was just me and Kay in the swamp.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, now we joined you, so hello.
welcome, and we're sorry to have you have to join us.
Can I
Um,
bring my candles at least to your swamp?
yes,
Good,
please do. It
good.
needs some illumination.
Some sage.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Um, unsure how much of this we're going to keep. I'll leave this decision on all of you, but a part of what brought me into the world of privacy is that I grew up LGBT in a conservative Republican household in the United States, where my father was actually a Republican politician, right? So it wasn't the normal level of Republican. It was that brought me to privacy by necessity. So those feelings of being overwhelmed about having to learn all of it, and also being young enough that this wasn't being taught in school, and there
No,
were no organizations at the time teaching it. So I just had to like do things and hope it worked. And break things and learn why they broke. Um,
yeah,
is not an unfamiliar feeling to me. So I feel very much for what you are going through at this moment and what others who are listening to this are going through at the moment, because it's a place where I personally have been. I'm not sure if I had grown up differently in a different household. I'm not sure that this is the career path I would have chosen because it wouldn't have been a necessity for me.
yeah. I mean, I came to it because of the whole Snowden thing. Before that, I wasn't. I was vaguely aware, but when that all kicked off, I was just kind of like so aghast by the whole situation. That's what led me to it. So, we asked for and got some questions um, from various listeners, and I'll go through a couple of them, as many as we can. Uh, Here's one. When cleaning up one's online presence, it's easy enough to delete accounts, edit privacy settings, etc. What about media data that leaves the intended platform? And I think what they're talking about is scrapers, things that scrape posts from Blue Sky, Mastodon. Uh, is there really any point to cleaning up uh, those kind of posts if they can be readily scraped and siloed elsewhere?
Who would like to talk about that?
I think you'll probably be better on that one.
Okay. Um, so I need to collect my thoughts for a second. I've been doing a lot of thinking about this because it's actually something I've researched in the past, and published papers on. Um, there are data aggregation companies, the research that I did was in the context of the United States. There are data aggregation companies that will aggregate a whole bunch of personal information from a whole bunch of sources and sell them to whoever for literally like $2. And this includes things like addresses, phone numbers, etc. in the United States. I don't know if these companies exist in other countries. One of the things that also existed were companies that you would pay a modest fee to, and they would promise to delete all of the data from said companies. And so what we did is we tested that, paid the companies, see if things deleted. Very, very, very quickly. So quickly, in fact, that there must be a direct line from the company that we paid to the company that held the data. In other words, we probably paid a subsidiary of the same company to delete data from themselves. If you do this by yourself, it is a lengthy, difficult process, but it could still be worth it depending on where you live. If you live in the European Union or any country that is beholden to a law called the GDPR, or the General Data Privacy Regulation, you have a right to demand that companies delete your data. And also you can ask them where they sent the data to, and then you could do that process iteratively. But it is very difficult to do that process iteratively, especially if the data was sent over to the United States, because one of the findings that we had is that a lot of the people in the United States misunderstand the GDPR and basically say, well, we block people from Europe and we are not a European company, so we don't have to worry about it, which is incorrect. So the bleak vision here is that it won't be 100% possible to remove all of your data from every place that it's ever been to. But the positive portion of the vision is that in the experience from the experiments that we did, most places did delete data, even if we did not claim to be from one of the places that have privacy laws, such as California or the European Union, because to them, it was cheaper to just assume that we had the legal right to ask them to delete the data than to actually verify that we had the legal right to delete the data. And so they received the deletion, and most of them did actually delete the data. So that is a long-winded way of saying ask who they shared the data with, and then issue a deletion request to them as well. It is a long process. You may receive headaches, but it may be possible.
Okay. Cool. Another question was that a lot of places are requiring, not just asking, requiring phone verification. Is there a way, and I was thinking about this, is there a way to mitigate this? And I don't think there is. If a company requires a phone number to verify your login or your registration with them, you're kind of fucked. I mean, you can't have a different phone number for every single, facet of your life, surely. Or can you?
Uh,
Um,
so
Go for it. You first. I've been talking a lot.
I mean, so there are two ways of interpreting that question. There is, so if you were to kind of subscribe to the encrypted um, email service Proton Mail, they ask for a phone number just to kind of prevent people from creating multiple accounts that can then be abused in spam.
Hmm.
There are online services where you can generate occasionally successful alternative phone numbers for that
Yeah.
one-time initial registration.
Yeah.
In the second interpretation, which is regarding to sort of like two-factor authentication, um, it then it becomes trickier because um, it requires the same phone number again and again and again and again. Now, there is sociological research going that actually using phone numbers as two-factor authentications is actually discriminatory in large swathes of the US which don't have reliable cell phone coverage.
Mm.
Um, so the big sort of like tech conglomerates are trying to sort of push towards their sort of two-factor authenticator services. I know Google has one. Um, the Microsoft has one as well. I'm not sh There are open source alternatives, but I'm not sure of the reliability of them. But if we're talking in the two-factor authentication um, space, there is the alternative of having a hardware key, which the big services ex should accept. The kind of like prime example is called the YubiKey, but that
Mm.
may be a bit technical um, to implement. Same with the open source 2FA alternative. So it may then just be a choice between the phone number or installing sort of the proprietary Google or Microsoft app.
I've reached the level of paranoia where I use a YubiKey to log into my desktop. That's which is pretty hardcore.
I have an alternative here to a YubiKey called a Nitro key. That does basically the same thing, um, but you know, just to provide alternatives.
Mm. Mm.
I can actually speak to the other half of that though, which is certainly you can't use a different phone number for every aspect of your life, right?
Mm.
No, of course not. That would be absurd. But do you need to actually remember the phone number? Because for a lot of services, let's pick one from thin air, like Telegram. You just need to have the phone number once to sign up,
Yeah.
and that's it. They never check again. They don't send you text messages every week going like, "Hey, how's your day going? By the way, is this still your number?" And a lot of these applications have locks on them where you could lock them with a pin and say, even if someone else gets this number, they need to know my pin to get this account.
Yes, but I think the question was coming from a place of privacy rather than security. So
Yes,
it was more like now Telegram know my phone number kind of thing.
right. But what is this kind of build to? What it builds to, I can buy a single use SIM card, put it
Mm.
in my phone, get a phone number for just that one thing, sign up for just that one thing, and then never use that SIM card again in my life.
Yeah, yeah. Which I think, and that's fine for a kind of like one-off.
Yep.
But I mean, let's say you use, I don't know, 9 different services.
Right.
That's now you're talking about €90 rather than just €10.
Yes. Yes. Um, and to speak about that, the reason that this was €10 is because it is, it is supposed to be a whole month of data and
Yeah.
text messages and stuff like that. There are shorter things, especially nowadays, called electronic SIMs or eSIMs that are typically used when you travel. So the idea is you could get an application and you could go, "Oh, I'm going to be in Costa Rica. I need a Costa Rican um, uh, SIM card for my phone to work."
Mm.
My phone has an ability to just download a SIM card and I automatically get a Costa Rican phone number for 3 days.
Yeah.
And these end up being a lot cheaper. Instead of €10, it's like €2, etc.
Right.
And then
Mm.
after those 2 or 3 days, that's no longer active.
But for something like Telegram, it wouldn't matter.
Right, because they only check
Mm.
once.
Yeah. All right. I think the rest of the questions that we had, we've actually already covered. just during the course of talking generally. So everybody else, have you got any observations, criticisms, questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to say to people, especially sort of people who aren't sort of technically minded, for want of a better expression, don't despair or get overwhelmed by this. Like Kay said, it is small steps, and you start and you get into good habits. And then they just become another thing, and then you can up your game, and no one's expecting you to all of a sudden be completely secure, because those of us who know about IT security will tell you none of us think we're completely secure. We're just doing the best. We're just doing the best we know, and we keep a lookout for new things we can do to stay secure. So please,
It's a process.
yeah, if you feel overwhelmed, don't. We will provide, as I said, any mentions of software or websites or whatever. The Electronic Frontier Foundation will provide them in the notes. We will also be providing, as time goes on, more information regarding security on our socials, on our website. So, please, this is just an introduction. We don't mean to fucking scare you.
That's actually, yeah.
Let
we don't.
let the people who know about security be the ones to be scared because they understand the topic. Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot. Just thinking of things like, the example of getting a new smartphone. What should you do on an Android to turn off all the default settings that tell Google everything you're going to do with that phone, whether you want to or not, that kind of thing, but step by step. But shall we see does anyone else want to add something? Because we're coming up to 1 hour 30, so we don't want to make it too long and bore people to death and use up all the AI transcription minutes.
Just to add to the Android phone point, like a colleague of mine is currently having to build a secure information area, and the check, to click your fingers and be secure is not just clicking your fingers and be secure. There is a lot of social and process that goes behind I push a button and today I am secure. Again, we are not expecting that you can gradually build as Kay says, the security process. Like it can be 1 or 2 changes. Like there will be the record of what was before the changes, but as you gradually build into the changes and the practices, there will be less and less of a record. And the goal is to provide a smaller and smaller footprint and to be, a more diminished light and a diminished threat in the eyes of the grand database of the state or the corporations. It sucks. Again, it sucks, and I'm sorry. If that is the one big takeaway of like, yeah, it feels like shit. I'm really sorry about this.
Sucks. Everything sucks.
My sincerest apologies to archaeologists and historians of the future who want to look back and study this age to think about what we were thinking about and find only unintelligible zeros and ones.
Yeah, fuck you. We beat you.
I really thought that was going the way of, like, good luck finding anything unencrypted, to the point where all that is unencrypted is just dank memes on the internet. So all you find is just stupid shit on the internet, and everything private is actually just... Because I love that idea. I want to confuse the future archaeologists, so yeah.
Yeah, but I think they'll all have their quantum devices, and they'll go, "What did you call that? Encryption? What the fuck were you thinking?"
Instead of a dark age, it's a dank age.
Dank age.
So thank you for listening to this episode again, and thank you very much, Gis and Kay, for your invaluable contributions to a subject that an awful lot of people don't know an awful lot about, and an awful lot more people think they know something about but don't, and I wish they kept their traps shut if they did. If that makes any sense. Don't advise people on security if you're not sure about it. Is too long didn't read thing about it, and don't listen to anyone who claims to be a security expert unless you can verify it. Giz and Kay definitely are. I can vouch for that. So thank you very much again, and hail Satan.
Hail Satan.
Hail
Hail
Satan.
Satan!
Our usual thanks to friends of the podcast, Matt and the guys from Hearst Pileup, for letting us use their music as our theme tune. Why not check them out on Bandcamp? And while you're at it, why not check out our compilation, the proceeds of which go to charity, and it's called Contra Odium, from the Satan Not Hatin' campaign. As usual, if you have any comments or you'd like to suggest topics for future episodes, please email us at gospod@ghostsatan.com. That's GOSPOD at GOSATAN.com. And in the meantime, be well, hail Satan, and thank you for listening.